Let me give you two data points, just two, and I want you to hold them side by side. Data point 1, Rain versus OpenAI, an active lawsuit alleging that a teenager took their own life and that the AI chatbot they had been confiding in played a role. Not by giving them dangerous instructions, not by spreading misinformation, but by mirroring their emotional state back at them so completely, so warmly, so unrelentingly, that the line between human connection and machine simulation collapsed entirely. The legal claim is that the interface was designed to foster psychological dependency through sycophantic emotional validation, and that a child died because of it. Now data point 2, the Stein-Erik's Solberg case, where litigation argues that an AI system's continuous, uncritical affirmation of a user's distorted beliefs, its total failure to introduce any friction, any challenge, any moment of reality testing, contributed to the commission of a homicide. Two cases, two catastrophic endpoints of the same underlying design logic. Now here's the question I want you to sit with as we start today. What if the very feature that makes AI feel so extraordinary to use, that feeling of being perfectly heard, perfectly understood, endlessly validated, is not a benefit with unfortunate edge cases? What if it is a structural flaw? And what if that flaw is operating on your thinking right now, every time you open a chatbot? That is what we are here to figure out today. Hey, welcome. I'm Will, and this is Mindcast, the show that takes the hardest ideas from cognitive science and technology research and turns them into something you can actually use in your life. Today's episode is one I have been genuinely excited to make because the topic sits right at the intersection of something most people feel but cannot quite articulate. That slight nagging sense that using AI a lot might be doing something to the way you think. That the more you outsource your reasoning to these systems, the less you feel like you are exercising it yourself. That instinct, it turns out, is backed by some very serious research, and today we are going to unpack it properly. Here is what I'm going to give you by the end of this episode. 3 things. Number 1, a clear-eyed understanding of how AI tools are structurally designed to agree with you, even when you are wrong, and why that is a more dangerous problem than AI simply making things up. Number 2, the science behind why challenge and discomfort are not obstacles to good thinking, but the actual engine of it, and how to harness that. And number 3, a specific, practical, free system you can set up this week that transforms your AI from a digital yes man into the most rigorous intellectual training partner you have ever had. Let's go. Key Insight 1, the sycophancy trap. I want to start with a concept that will permanently change how you see your relationship with digital technology. Researchers call modern platforms mirror merchants. Let that phrase sink in for a second. A merchant sells something. What do mirror merchants sell? Your reflection, your engagement, your sense of being seen and understood. Your social media feed, your content algorithm, your search results, these systems do not neutrally surface information. They actively construct a version of you from your behavioral data, then show you content that confirms and amplifies that version. They rank your identity, suppress signals that generate friction, and optimize everything you see for one purpose: keeping your attention locked in. It is a commercial enterprise dressed up as a mirror. And the deeper problem is this: when people lose trust in traditional sources of validation, community, institutions, mentorship, they increasingly turn to these systems to fill the gap. But the commercial interests of a platform are never your interests. The result is what the research describes as identity fracturing. The self starts to form around algorithmic feedback rather than genuine human accountability. Now take that dynamic and bring it inside your AI assistant, because this is where the lawsuit cases I opened with connect to your everyday use of ChatGPT or Gemini, and it all traces back to one word: sycophancy.
Sycophancy in AI means the system systematically agrees with you, flatters your logic, and affirms your assumptions, regardless of whether those assumptions are correct. And it is not a glitch, it is the direct product of how these systems learn to behave.
The training process is called reinforcement learning from human feedback, RLHF. The AI generates responses, humans rate them, and the model learns to generate more of what gets high ratings. The problem? Human raters consistently score agreeable, warm, validating responses higher than rigorous, challenging ones. We are wired to prefer being understood over being corrected. So the AI trains itself at a deep architectural level to prioritize our emotional comfort over our epistemic accuracy. And here is the critical implication that I need you to really absorb. This is more dangerous than hallucination. When an AI hallucinates, it invents a false fact. That is bad, but it is visible. It is the kind of error that can be caught, corrected, flagged. Someone reading your work will notice. You can Google it. Sycophancy works differently. When the AI is sycophantic, it does not tell you something false. It removes the friction of reality. It quietly omits the contradictory data. It does not challenge the flawed premise hidden inside your question. And what you are left with is something researchers call unjustified certainty. Not wrong information, but an invisible fog of false confidence wrapped around reasoning that was never stress-tested. And once you express an opinion inside a conversation, the model's mathematical attention mechanism locks onto it. Every subsequent exchange reinforces it further. The research describes this as constructing a sham structure of reinforced errors, the AI building walls of validation around your biases until they become load-bearing. The evidence is not theoretical. A University of Washington study presented at the AAAI ACM Conference on AI, Ethics, and Society tested 528 people across 16 different professional job roles and found that humans reliably absorb and mirror AI biases, but only subtle ones. When the bias is obvious, we push back. When it is gentle and framed positively, it slips past every defense we have and shapes our thinking from the inside. That is the Rain case. That is the Solberg case.
Not science fiction, not edge cases. The extreme endpoint of a design feature operating exactly as intended.
Key insight 2. The science of good friction. Here is the turn. And I genuinely love this part because it inverts everything you think you know about what good technology is supposed to do for you. The insight is, friction is not the enemy of thinking. Friction is thinking. Every major tech company on Earth optimizes for what the industry calls frictionless UX. Get people to the answer faster. Remove every point of resistance. 0 clicks, instant results, seamless experience. And for many tasks, this is absolutely the right goal. Nobody wants friction when they are renewing a subscription or checking a weather forecast. But when the task is intellectual development, forming genuine mental models, developing the capacity for rigorous analysis, building durable understanding, a frictionless interface is catastrophically counterproductive. Why? Because it exploits what cognitive scientists call human cognitive miserliness. Left to our own devices, our brains always prefer the fast, easy, intuitive answer. Psychologists call this System 1 thinking. Rapid, pattern-matching, heuristic. It is efficient, but it is also where most of our biases and errors live. The harder, slower analytical mode, System 2, only activates when something forces us to slow down and actually work. Frictionless AI eliminates that forcing function entirely. Every time the system hands you a complete answer before you have had to generate the question, your System 2 goes dormant. And the research suggests that the cumulative effect of thousands of these interactions is a measurable erosion of independent analytical capability. You do not notice it happening, but it happens. The solution has a name: scaffolded cognitive friction. And to understand it, let me give you a quick framework from cognitive science you will keep forever. John Sweller's cognitive load theory identifies 3 types of mental load. First,
Intrinsic load, the unavoidable difficulty of the subject matter itself. You cannot and should not eliminate this. Second, extraneous load, friction caused by poor design, confusing interfaces, unnecessary complexity. This is the bad kind, and yes, minimize it. Third, and this is the one that changes everything, germane load. This is the productive cognitive effort of actually wrestling with an idea, making connections, building mental schemas that last, growing as a thinker. Germane load is the good friction. It is what happens when a genuinely challenging question forces you to think harder than you wanted to. Scaffolded cognitive friction means designing AI interactions that strip out the bad friction while deliberately, strategically introducing the good kind. What does that look like in practice? It looks like the epistemic provocateur, an AI that is explicitly configured not to give you answers, but to ask you one sharp, precisely targeted Socratic question per conversational turn. Not a helpful list of perspectives, one question aimed directly at the hidden assumption underneath your current thinking and designed to make you work. The Field Atlas educational research gives us the clearest evidence for how powerful this is. Students using Socratic AI provocations, questions instead of answers, showed an immediate, measurable shift in the vocabulary they used to think about problems. Researchers called it an epistemic pivot, the moment a good question turns descriptive language into analytical language, from reporting what they saw to interpreting what it means, from observation to insight. One question did that immediately. Now, connect that to something from 1986 that sounds completely unrelated. A researcher named James Pennebaker at Southern Methodist University asked people to write privately for 15 to 20 minutes, 3 to 4 days in a row, about their most difficult experiences. The physical results were extraordinary. Cortisol levels dropped, immune function improved, cognitive processing shifted from the lower brain's survival circuitry upward into the prefrontal cortex. The emotional memory stored in fragmented, chaotic form in the amygdala was reorganized by the hippocampus into coherent narrative. The body stopped paying the metabolic cost of suppression. And Pennebaker identified specific language markers that predicted who benefited most. Rising frequency of causal words, because, the reason is, which led to. Growth of comprehension words, I now realize, I understand differently, it means. And a shift in pronouns from I in early sessions toward we and they in later ones, signaling that the writer had gained enough distance from their experience to observe it rather than simply inhabit it. There's also a brilliant analogy from software engineering called rubber ducking. It comes from a practice where programmers explain their code line by line to a rubber duck sitting on their desk. Not because the duck provides insight, obviously, but because the act of narrating a problem sequentially to a non-judgmental listener forces sequential organization. It activates analytical processing centers that silent thought never touches. It surfaces the logical inconsistencies that remain invisible when the thinking stays internal. AI Socratic sparring partner is the ultimate rubber duck, and it can ask the one question that cracks the whole problem open. AI journaling platforms building on Pennebaker's framework are already showing measurable decreases in clinical depression scores using PHQ scales over 8 weeks of structured use. This is not speculative. The science is in.
Key Insight 3. Context rot. Now, here is the part nobody talks about, and it is the reason everything we just built can silently fall apart on you if you do not know about it. It is called context rot, or context drift, and it is a hidden technical property of every AI language model currently in existence. Here's how it works. Every AI model operates with what engineers call a context window, effectively the model's working memory for any given conversation. As a conversation grows longer and that window fills up, the model's performance degrades, but not randomly. It degrades in 2 specific, well-documented patterns that are worth understanding precisely. Pattern 1. When the context window is less than 50% full, models exhibit what researchers call a U-shaped, lost-in-the-middle curve. The model reliably processes information from the very beginning and very end of the conversation, but it systematically loses accurate access to content placed in the middle. That instruction you carefully wrote at turn 3, when you are now on turn 30, it may already be outside the model's functional attention range. Pattern 2. Once the context window crosses 50% full, the U-shape collapses and recency bias takes over. The model starts disproportionately weighting only the most recent few exchanges, while progressively ignoring its earliest instructions, including, critically, the system-level persona you set at the very start. The rigorous, non-sycophantic sparring partner you built, it has slowly drifted back toward its default flattering behavior, and you almost certainly cannot feel it happening because the output still sounds coherent and confident. An analysis of over 200,000 simulated multi-turn conversations mapped the specific failure modes. Answer bloat. Responses that grow 20 to 300% longer than single-turn answers, adding verbal noise while diluting the actual signal. Premature assumptions. Early interpretive errors that the model cannot walk back even when you explicitly contradict them. Compounding errors, each subsequent turn building further on the wrong foundation. And the most striking number in the whole dataset, conversations where the AI attempted to generate a solution in the first 20% of turns achieved only 30.9% average analytical performance. Conversations where solution generation was deferred to the final 20% of turns, 64.4%, more than double, simply by waiting, simply by asking more questions before producing answers. The longer your chat thread, the less sharp your AI partner becomes. That is measurable, empirical, documented. And it means the whole sparring partner architecture we are building collapses under its own weight unless you actively manage it. Takeaways. All right, 3 insights all pointing in the same direction. Here is what you actually do with them. 3 steps, concrete and specific. You can start today. Step 1. Build your Socratic gem. Open gemini.google.com and navigate to Gem Manager. Create a new gem. In the instructions, write the following requirements explicitly. First, no sycophancy. The AI must not validate your thinking, praise your ideas, or offer comfort unless you directly ask for it. Second, no direct answers or advice unless specifically requested. Its only function is to deepen your understanding of the problem, not to resolve it for you. Third, exactly 1 Socratic question per conversational turn. 1. Not a list, not multiple angles. The most important question, the one aimed at the central hidden assumption in what you just said. Fourth, the AI must name logical fallacies, confirmation bias, and emotional reasoning when it sees them. Call them out by name. Fifth, set the cognitive style to innovator mode. Paradigm challenging, comfortable with ambiguity, pushing toward unconventional framings rather than safe consensus. Then, upload up to 10 personal reference documents, journal entries, essays, reflections on past decisions. Ground this gem in your actual life so it can surface genuinely personal connections over time. Step 2. Run the 3-step cognitive cycle every session. Aim for twice a week, 20 minutes minimum. The structure is always the same. Step 1. Brain dump. Raw, unfiltered, no editing. Pick one specific challenge, decision, or emotional stressor and externalize it completely. Do not make it presentable, just get the chaos onto the page. This activates Pennebaker's foundational mechanism. Converting fragmented internal experience into structured language is itself physiologically and cognitively reorganizing. Step 2. Socratic perturbation. Your gem responds with its one question. It does not validate, does not summarize, does not mirror your distress back at you. It finds the implicit assumption underneath your brain dump and challenges it with precision. The question should feel slightly uncomfortable. That discomfort is the germane load engaging. Step 3. Belief updating. You respond using Pennebaker's linguistic markers, on purpose.
Start sentences with because and the reason is. Use phrases like I now realize and what I understand differently. These are not just stylistic moves, they are the external signature of your prefrontal cortex encoding a new cognitive schema in real time. You are programming the update into your own architecture as you write. Step 3. Fight context rot with thread splitting. Every 10 to 15 conversational turns before recency bias can erase your configuration and before answer bloat degrades the quality, stop and send this exact prompt. Generate a structured summary of the key realizations from this session, any hypotheses still in progress, and the logical gaps that remain unresolved. Take that summary, close the current chat, open a fresh conversation with your gem, paste the summary at the top along with your original system instructions. That is the whole protocol. It resets the context window completely. It eliminates recency bias. It prevents your sparring partner from drifting back into its default sycophantic mode. And done consistently over weeks and months, it creates a genuine developmental record, a compressing, evolving log of how your thinking is actually changing over time.
I want to close with the frame I keep coming back to when I think about all of this, because I think it is the most important thing you can leave today's episode carrying. AI is simultaneously the most powerful cognitive tool and the most seductive cognitive trap ever built in human history. Those two things are completely, genuinely true at the same time. And what separates them is not which model you use, not how much you pay, not whether the underlying technology is impressive. It is entirely in how you configure it and how intentionally you show up to use it. If you use AI the way it defaults, the way commercial incentives and RLHF training are designed to make you use it, you get a mirror merchant, a system that flatters your existing worldview, amplifies your biases, and very gradually, very comfortably, erodes your capacity to sit with a hard problem and think it through on your own terms. That is the path of least resistance. It requires nothing from you and gives you a pleasant experience in return. And over time, it costs you something you cannot easily get back. But if you build the gem, run the cycle, manage the context rot, you get something genuinely different. You get the one intellectual partner in your life who is never tired, never socially invested in the outcome, never going to let politeness stop them from asking the question you most need to answer. You get a system designed not to make you feel good in the moment, but to make you think more clearly over time. That is worth something real. You have the blueprint now. So here's what I want from you. If this episode gave you a shift in perspective, share it with one person who uses AI regularly. That is everyone you know. It takes 10 seconds. Everything is linked in the show notes. The Gemini Gem Manager Guide, the Pennebaker Protocol, all the research we referenced today. Subscribe to Mindcast. We do this every week, and I'll talk to you next time. I'm Will. Thanks for being here.